we are about zooming into the panel discussion where we'll be having thought-provoking conversations that will drive policy making and policy implementation in Ghana. And so, quickly, the person to moderate this particular session, that is the panel discussion, she is an accomplished communication and marketing professional. She is a current global vice president of Swedru Global and a 1993/1995 PSCA. She is the director of public affairs at the University of Media, Arts and Communication. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Nana Ifua Broxen. Now to the panel. We have an individual who was educated at the University of Ghana, at the Ghana Law School in Economics and Law. He was born on the 15th of February 1955, and after spending 9 years working with British Petroleum in Ghana in various executive marketing positions, he set up the Tropical Products Limited. And in 1997, he expanded into the cable manufacturing by incorporating Tropical Cable and Conductor Limited with the active assistance of Empretech Ghana. He's a married man with 5 children, and he is a keen squash player and is interested in building a company which will survive him. Ladies and gentlemen, with a huge round of applause, help me welcome Dr. Tony Watin Jesse. And it will interest you to know that he is a PSCA of the 1970 year group. Please give it up to him once again. Next, we have a PSCA of the 1983 year group. He is a lawyer by profession with 32 years of experience, and his specialty is in corporate law and litigation. And he's not only interested in law, but also a football administration partner, and also a partner of Sean Benjamin and Associates. Help me welcome lawyer Kweku Eya. Lawyer Kweku Eya is also a PSCA from the 1983 year group, as mentioned earlier. Then, we have a woman joining the panel. She is also a lawyer and a law lecturer at UPSA Law School. She is a former magistrate and a founding partner of the Law Office of Kwenu. With a round of applause, help me welcome PSCA Mavis Kwenu. PSCA Mavis Kwenu is from the 1994 year group. And so, now it's time for us to begin the conversation. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm humbled to sit here and be having a discussion with my astute seniors and learned friends who are learned, because I'm not learned. And when Mr. President asked me to come and moderate the session, I was like, why? Because I'm one person when it comes to politics. I won't try to run away. But then I learned from what the main speaker spoke about, that we should all be involved, because when we shy away, then we cannot have the conversations. So today I have repented, starting from how we are going to discuss this. The main speaker, Dr. David Ofosu-Dorotey, has shared a lot for us to chew on. And as he was speaking, I was asking myself, how do we regurgitate this, take out the nutrients, use the remainder as fertilizer for our nation's growth? A lot has been said, and I don't think that this forum provides the opportunity for us to discuss them all, but we would attempt to do that. And to start from you, Dr. Otinjesi, and move on to the other panel members. What are your thoughts on the presentation by Dr. Ofosu-Dorotey?
Very simple thoughts. I think David has said it all. We should all go home. There isn't much left from what David has said, but seeing the kind of country we are, and in particular when I look at our demographic statistics, you know, too often when I walk around this country, I hear people blaming the old people, and that the young people maybe will do things better, you know. So I just would like to remind them that this country has not always been ruled by old people. Indeed, when Kwame Nkrumah became president at independence, he was all of 47 years old. And he had even been leader of government business since 1952. So then he was, 42 when he became leader of government business and actually ran this country. And he's not the only one. If we look further, we will find out that maybe the oldest was General Ankara, who became president of Ghana, head of state, when he was 50 as a military ruler. By the time we got to Jerry Rawlings became head of state at 32 in fact, 31 and 33, in his early 30s, you know. And if you look at the length of time Jerry was head of state, this country has been ruled more by young people than old people. So if we haven't done well, it is not because of people like me. Another point I'd like to make, in addition to what David has so brilliantly gone through, we are always talking about leadership style. You know, we talk constantly, all sorts of styles, dictators, autocrats, charismatic leaders, transactional leaders, visionary leaders. Too often, we tend to see leaders in one dimension. But really, to be a leader, you need to have different styles at different times. So I'm familiar with the private sector. What I do know is that if you are starting a business, for instance, you have to be a dictator. You have to be an autocrat in order to start a business at that stage. It does not mean that if you have 20 years down the line, if your business has grown, you can continue being an autocrat. If you do that, you'll fail. Because there's a time when you need a certain kind of management skill which you may not have. So I remember when Osofo was starting Central, you know, I once heard one of your stories about how you used to come in early, even pack the benches yourself, even clean the benches. So at that time, he was acting as usher, acting as cleaner, acting as, but that was the start of the enterprise, if you like it, you know. And at that time, he had to be a certain kind of leader. As we grow, you have to be a different kind of leader. In the context of our country, then, what kind of leader should we be looking for? I hear too often people talk about.
Would come into the leadership itself.
Yeah.
So thank you. All those important thoughts.
Let me just bring this to an end. Too often we talk about needing strong leaders, but it is not right that a leader needs to be strong at all times. For our country, sometimes a leader ought to be able to say, I'm sorry, I did the wrong thing. Sometimes a leader needs to be strong. Sometimes a leader needs to be flexible. And that's the kind of leader I think we will need. But we'll go on and talk about the other leaders.
Thank you very much. So, Lawyer, briefly, what are your thoughts on the presentation before we delve into discussing the various aspects of it? So I think we should all check our microphones now.
It's working now?
Yeah, it's working now.
I think it was really satisfying. In fact, when the president, I called him Samuel, I said, global, and he called me and said, but he spoke to me on the phone and said, there was something concerning that he wanted me to participate. I said, why not? I had a challenge because my father died recently, but I will find time. I just want to take my lesson off that, so I'll find time to do it. And then he said, sure. I said, oh, whatever the topic is, yes. I said I will do it. So he said something, I didn't look at it. So 2 days later, I called and said, but I'm not a politician. Why do you want me to be talking about Conundrum? Have I stood for elections? Have I president? Why should I be trying to digest Ghana's problem, basically? Especially when somebody can easily put me in a certain bracket. Either you are for this or you are for that. So why should I do it? Basically. Then he was like, oh, but I told you, I said, at least listen to the topic first, and he said you can do it. So and definitely I think you are in a position to do it, so you can do it.
Let's check the microphones.
So you can do it. I said okay. So I said okay, fine. I'm going to do it. I listened to the speech. It was brilliant. It touched on certain areas I had not thought about really, because when I was given the topic, I also had to look at certain meanings, look at certain definitions, and try to situate it in the context. There are areas I never looked at in terms of the historical context. Chiefs, fetish priests, everybody being a leader in his or her own right. What has happened to the Ghana system since he took it to the days of Mansa Musa and then beyond, and then trace it to the current dispensation. I think it was quite brilliant. He also touched on certain aspects of the Constitution, and something I also think about, especially how our constitution is now. In the same vein, I believe that there are certain aspects of the Constitution which leaders ought to use at the yardstick if they really want to transform the country.
Thank you very much, Lawyer Iya. And we can please do it better for him. And Lawyer Mavis, briefly, what are your thoughts on the presentation? Then we will delve into the various aspects of it.
Before I comment on the question, I'd like to commend our executives of the Swedru Alumni Association, particularly our global president. He is a leader. We're talking about leadership. He is a great leader. Yes, we are talking about leadership. There's every reason to celebrate him. For him and his reign, see where we are today as a school. We cannot appreciate him. We cannot just finish appreciating this man. Everything that he has done and keeps doing, it is not just for his personal gains, but for our present generation and future. It has everything to do with our political leadership as we are discussing. I'm so glad to have also had the opportunity to sit by a wonderful leader when it comes to religion, to sit by him today. I also watch you. We thank God for your life. And importantly, that you are a PSA. We are so proud of you. Yes. And to add to what my senior colleagues at the bar have stated, when I was given the topic, I also tried to do a little bit of research. And surprisingly, I came across a detailed research on leadership. And I was so surprised when I was reading, it was about you, somebody writing about you. I'm talking about our chairman today, Reverend Mensah Otabo. Let's clap for him. It's amazing. Yes. The paper that I read on leadership, one had every discussion about this man in terms of who is a leader, the qualities a leader needs to exhibit and all of it. It was a study about him. So as a school, we are so proud to have you and also to chair this program. Now, in trying to address the question with respect to the presentation made by the special guest of honor, I think he has done a great job to the topic because, as I said, I did a little bit of research, but man was limited in scope. He took us through the historical development of the various leaders we've had, not only after independence, but all the way to Mansa Musa, names we heard when we were children. You have done great. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lawyer Mavis.
My sister cut me short.
We are now coming into the discussion.
Great. All right.
Yeah. And I think that it's just fair that we invite the main speaker, Dr. David Fosudote. I think you've had some time to sit and to drink more water, to join us for the discussion. Thank you. So, Dr. Martin, you started talking about the leadership when I said, hold that thoughts for a while. And one of the key things that the main speaker spoke about was leadership. And I want to premise this with a quote by Professor Stephen Adair, who said, leadership is cause, all other things are effect. With that, what should our political leaders do to navigate resistance to change in our quest to achieve transformation in this country?
I think that our political leaders need to be aware of a few things. Let me mention a couple of them. Just like I started with the age of leaders, there's also the style of leadership, you know. And in the peculiar case of political leadership, indeed, it's similar in business leadership. The people with whom you acquire leadership need not be the people with whom you rule. As a leader, different people will get attracted to you for different reasons. And it is for you to find out and to determine amongst them what are their real motivations in joining you. there's no problem with whatever their motivation is. They join you, you all do well, you become a leader. It is for you as a leader to check each person's motivation and give him the appropriate solution, if you like. In our country, a lot of people go into politics because they want to make money. No problem with that. As a leader, you will have access to money-making opportunities. Let them have those opportunities, but not as political leaders with you. Because if you are a real leader and you have a vision of what you want to do, putting such people in political positions will invariably lead to what we all call, what is it? What's the name? Corruption. So give them money-making opportunities outside of being in government. That is what they want. And I think that is the bane of Africa. That too often the people who help us come to power, we see them as rewarding them with political positions. Even when it's not the governing and the assistance to the country where you have defined leadership that they want. It is to make some money for themselves. No problem. Help them in the private sector. Help them set out and let them make the money. And find people who have your vision at heart with you to help you attain that vision. And I will also add this, that a leader should always, in my opinion, wield a big stick. Do you know what I mean by that? A leader should also know when to say no. You cannot be a leader if you do not know and do not have the courage to say no. I'll end it here and let them go.
Thank you very much. Please, let's put our hands together for this. So the people who help you to gain power are not necessarily the same people you have to rule. Leaders have to be courageous. Leaders need to have a big stick to measure whatever they're doing, and also should have the courage to say, wow. Great points there. Now, Lawyer Elliott, Doc spoke about the three enemies of leadership, and he talked about the old system, the fear of change, and the masses, where leaders stick to things that are too familiar and long and prevent them from moving forward. In our current dispensation, what do you think our leaders should do to ensure transformation, bearing in mind these three enemies that they are grappling with?
No, it's kind of a difficult proposition, and that is where you have this conundrum or dilemma. You struggle to understand certain leaders in a given context, but you understand them better if you look, if you just juxtapose it against the scenarios which got them into power. You are talking about the masses. The masses are the people who vote for them, basically, and each person has a vote. You are talking about the party that the person represents. You are talking about the vision he or she may have. And like the speaker said, every person or whoever has come as Ghana's leader has come with a vision. It is rare to find someone. No, everybody has a vision, and everybody has a sense of direction which he thinks this country will go. But you are looking at the people who he's aspiring to rule over, and the people who are supporting him. Take a situation of somebody supporting a political party, and the leader. One of the problems you have in our context is that party political funding is absent from our dictionary. If you are in government, everybody assumes that you are a thief. So you got money to campaign from the coffers. What about somebody in opposition? How did he get the money to campaign? How is he campaigning? Where did he get all his money from? Nobody's really interested in that. But the point is that people fund them. Some people approve them, some do better. Some can come to you and say that, I'm prepared to give you X amount of dollars, provided when you win power, you give me this contest, this portfolio. They trade with it. And if a person comes to power, you also expect that reward from him. Whether you are in a position to do what you said you will or not, you advance money for that purpose, and it's for that purpose that the person has won the election. So what do you do? The person who has been elected must fulfill his promise. So for somebody sitting somewhere, you see that, how come this person has been given such a job? The person really does not, like he struggles to understand. But between the leader and the person, the leader understands, the person understands. So you, the person who voted, is the one who is struggling to understand. But they understand, because he's being rewarded for also funding the person. We have not talked about that in our political dispensation. That's an area we need to look at. Political funding. How are political parties funded? What monies come in? There are certain political parties who even go as far as getting external funding outside. And in all these things, when the person comes to power, all these things come into play. So it is an area I believe we need to look at. It is not a question, I will not really put it down to greed. It is more like a barter system, believe you me. I will not say it is greed, but it is how we ourselves have. So if we need to move away from that, let's have a serious political discourse on how we fund our political party. I believe it's one way which will help in solving the problems we have and the conundrums a leader may find himself in.
Thank you very much, lawyer. So you've added one enemy, political funding. How do we resolve that for our transformation? Lawyer Mavis, in his delivery, he talked about unity as being important for development. And as leaders, and that which is one needs not to become one. It is those who are diverse. I mean, I'm paraphrasing from it. So we need unity, not because we are one, because we are diverse. How should our political leaders navigate this? Because we are just 45 days into the new government. And I believe that this conversation, they are listening. So how should they navigate this to bring about the unity we all seek here in Ghana?
Thank you.
Mavis, I'll come to you, Doug.
Thank you very much. In listening to our guest speaker, he mentioned that leaders are made and they are not born with it. Leaders become leaders not to enjoy the positions they occupy, but rather to make a positive impact in the lives of the people who place them there. So for our leaders that we've had over time, it appears we still have a long way to go as a country. Something is certainly wrong with the type of leaders that we have. Even when we talk about the unity we're talking about, most of them failed in bringing all of us together as united people called Ghanaians, proud Ghanaians. Unity also comes what naturally, if you have an effective leader who is able to carry out his mandate as expected. And again, our type of governance system is structured on what? Democracy. Every democracy certainly is strengthened by certain principles, constitutional principles we've made for ourselves. The rule of law, principles of transparency, accountability. When the people see governance in accordance to the very laws that set up our three arms of government, including the offices of our leaders, the confidence in our public with respect to the work of our leaders will certainly be what? Enhanced. Unity will follow naturally. In the same vein, when our leaders carry us along at every step of the process through strategic communication in ways that we can see as members of the public as being truthful, trust will also be built, and naturally we all rally behind this leader as united people, irrespective of our backgrounds and the various political divides we may be affiliated with. So for us to be united, I think all Ghanaians agree with me that at a stage in our political landscape, we yearn to see our country lifted from where we are presently. You could see from the election result that we had. Ghanaians are more than ever prepared to come together as one, united to make the changes that we all need to see. Unlike before, people like me will never come close to politics. To even mount this podium, I'll decline it. But we've gotten to a stage in the history of our country that no one can sit on the fence. Everyone's voice matters. To put our leaders in check and to all see the Ghana we want to see, where opportunities are made available to all as one people, and not situation where a leader will come into power and rather use the time to make himself and those who associate with him better than the common good of the people. So that is what I can say in respect of unity.
Thank you very much, Lawyer Mavis. So the common good of the people is very important to create unity. Now, Dr. Duterte, in your conversation with us, there's one thing you tried not to do to prescribe the kind of leadership we need here in Ghana. But I also understand why you fail to be prescriptive, because different situations requires different kind of leadership. But how can our leadership achieve its desired effectiveness with raging patronizing culture of our political parties, where the political parties are putting pressure on the government to do A, B, even though, to borrow the words of Mason, might not be the common good of the populace?
So my not prescribing was deliberate, because, maybe I speak too fast and because of the time, because I said in an enterprise, when we are looking for a messenger, you prescribe what you are looking for. We don't have any qualification for our political leaders. There's a qualification for member of parliament. And for example, if you want to be president, the qualification for member of parliament is the same qualification for president. But those qualifications are not talking about integrity, truthfulness, etc. So it essentially boils down to popularity, right? Now, where a leader is elected as a result of being popular, and that's how it is. I'm not a fan of amending constitution. Give me a couple of minutes. I've said this, and at the Constitutional Day lecture, I repeated it. Ghanaians have this habit of blaming the law for everything. We give excuse for an inefficiency. An organization is a committee, and they say they want to be a commission. They change the law to commission. They say they want to be authority. They change it to authority. And they are more ineffective when they become authority than they were before. So it is not the law. And I made this point. No law, and I'm repeating, I've said this over and over. No law on earth is so good as to prevent an evil-minded person from doing bad. There's absolutely no law. If he wants to do bad, he will go around the law. And no law is so bad as to prevent a good-minded person from doing good. If the law is bad, you will do good if you want to. And I've said over and over that our constitution, as I understand it, says cabinet is up to 19. But all our presidents have found a way to distinguish cabinet from ministers and go to 123. Now we've come to 60. The last time I was on City FM, there was a question from Bernard Abele about with the president 60, and I said, as at that day, he had gotten to 56. And I applaud him for that. And I wish he would stay at 56. That he shouldn't add the 4. I'm coming to. So you cannot be prescriptive about our leaders because our system evolves on popularity. What you should do rather is to recommend what the leaders should do once through their popularity they have attained power. That's what we should be doing. So we solve practical problems. And what should they be doing? Those are the recommendations that I made. There are times that they have to be authoritative, punish people when there are times that they have to judge. You are dealing with chiefs and the rest who blessed you before you went into power. There are times the people who funded you politically, you have to tell them, go and see this man and do this business, but I can't give you this position. Why will I do that? Because I know the natural tendency of Ghanaians to be pompous. It is not just because they want money. They want the power in addition to show off. A leader should be conscious of that. So when the leader recognizes all these things I'm pointing out, then the leader will realize that my goal, and again, I keep saying, I judge a leader by 2 things. How I see leadership, that is to make things better, and 2, how the leader himself wants to be judged. So if the leader says that I want to be judged, for example, by resetting Ghana, I set out what are the resetting standards, and how should I judge by the end of a certain period. That's how I judge. It's as simple as that. So I will be happy if leaders recognize this conundrum and overcome it, because in the midst of that, you can achieve both the political goal, the social goal, the economic goal. You can achieve all of it. It is when we fail to recognize these problems that suddenly there is something somewhere, then we say external shocks. That's the point I'm making.
Thank you, Dr. Adute. That's very interesting. Now, I think that it's interesting how you pointed the number of ministers we have in our cabinet. Before the program, we're having a tete-a-tete on the number of ministers and all that. And Dr. Tinjesi had some interesting points on that. Doc, would you like to share that with us?
Very briefly on numbers, because to buttress the point David is making, sometimes we obsess over the numbers. So let me give you a little research. The UK has 21 cabinet ministers and another 50 people of cabinet rank who attend cabinet. So in total, if you're really looking at ministerial rank, the UK has about 109 people of ministerial rank. Though when you look, they tell you that they have 19 cabinet ministers. South Africa has 34 cabinet ministers, 40 deputies, and 41 people they call director generals who are of cabinet rank. It's a total of 115. As for the US, by the time you add the secretaries and under secretaries and deputy secretaries and all, you are close to 1,000. But that is a world power. The point I'd like to make is that it is not the numbers that matter. A bad person will make a good law not work. A good person will make the bad law work, like David said. We obsess over inconsequentials. It is not the numbers which matter. The ability, how they do the work, and whether they can do it. And one last point. Ghana got into this system of counting ministers because we got to Malaysia and found out that in Malaysia, the time when Malaysia Telecom came here and all, we started dealing with Malaysia. Almost every important government project has somebody of ministerial rank overseeing it. But then there are clear KPIs. Your budget is this, your delivery time is this, it should be finished by this, and you finish and your ministerial rank is over. You have finished your job unless there is a new one or something. You know, so we leave out the essentials of things and then find an easy way to do it. But that is the point. The numbers don't matter. It is what they are supposed to be doing.
Thank you, Doc. Numbers don't matter. It is what you're supposed to do. And if you're running Ghana as an enterprise, then there are clear KPIs that we're going to measure them with and ensure that at the end of the day, the outputs are what we all expect to happen. Lawyer, talking about our political leaders and where we are as a country, where we've become, let me say, comfortable with always receiving, okay, for our good. It's not a bad thing. But now that USA has withdrawn funding, and knowing how it's going to hurt a lot, especially healthcare and lots of our industries, how do we manage the current complexity of our global economy and the impact it's having in Ghana?
I'm not an economist, but I will try. What I see about funding is that we should not overly rely on funding, external funding for that matter. We should try as much as possible to have our own internal funding and then let the external ones come in as and when. But when we, like the main speaker said, when we rely on the external funding and we get the external shocks, that is where we struggle, because there are things that ordinarily we do not have control over. So if it is external funding, it is that coming in where you receive your funding from that determines what you are required to do. It is not you determining what you want to do. So if the person decides otherwise, that he's not going to support you again, what do? It is like what's happened with USAID. They've been with us from time immemorial and helped Ghana a lot in terms of funding the health sector especially. And then out of the blues, a leader comes and says a lot of things about USAID and tells them that we've gone off USAID, you are no longer there. He's not thinking about the employment created outside. He's not thinking about the help. It is America's interest which he thinks is paramount, and what he has, whether it affects you or not, for him, he has pulled the plugs off you. So find a way. If we were not over-reliant on them, we would definitely have had certain things, and they will come in only to support or supplement. So my view on that will be that we should look for ways of generating our own income instead of being over-reliant on external funding, especially when we don't have any control. And they in turn turn around and even direct you on exactly how they want you to be controlled.
Thank you very much. Yes, we should find ways of being self-reliant. I mean, President Trump is talking about make America great again. What can we say? Can we make Ghana great again, or even great?
Oh, Ghana
yes,
we can. Ghana is great. We can make it greater.
We can make it greater. And
yeah.
now talking about that, Esquire Mavis, there was one key thing that the main speaker, Dr. Dote, talked about, collective individualization. I mean, talking about how we can transform Ghana, make Ghana great. How should we work around this? And because sometimes, I mean, as he explained it, we are talking about the collective good, but we are selfish to only think about ourselves. And we see this being played at the highest of levels and even at state organizations where everybody is thinking about how can I put myself out there, make myself great, rather than the collective good of the institution and invariably for the country. How do we navigate this?
Yes, that has been the practice over time. When people yearn for power, they speak a certain language to win the trust of the people. And immediately they cross over and find themselves in the seats. their behavior and attitude also changes with it. They take the electorate for granted. Those belongs to history for now. I make reference to the last election. You can see that it appears most Ghanaians were asleep. But now I'm so happy that Ghanaians cannot be taken for granted again. When you take our constitution, for instance, the power of governance clearly states that it belongs to who? Can you tell me? It belongs to the people. But sometimes it becomes mind-boggling when you try to relate it to reality. What is happening on the ground? It's as if rather the power belongs to those in the seat. The governed as against the governors. We need to always remind ourselves, as electorates and as members in the governing seat, about the laws that regulate our offices, our mandate, and the extent we can go. If we hold our leaders accountable, the issue of amassing wealth, living extravagant lifestyle, which defies all logic, and all the ills associated with some of our leaders will be a thing of the past. When it comes to the day of reckoning, I mean the day to elect the rightful people to lead us, these will be guiding principles for us to ensure that at least we get the best. There's no way to really elect best people, but at least those could guide us. We could measure their performance as against whether they were able to live up to some of the ideals of accountability, rule of law, whether they carried us along in the form of what? Democracy, where everybody's voice matters. Whether they listen to the people when they speak. Whether even after this program, some of the thought-provoking issues that have come up will be translated into policies for all of us to see that, yes, this is the Ghana we all want to have.
This is the Ghana.
You and I. Let's not sit on the fence, let's all get involved.
Thank you, Mavis. Let's all not sit on the fence, let's get involved, because government is for the people. Dr. Dutey, you talk about the long-term view and the transactional nature of how we do things here in Ghana. In your view, how can we ensure that we take a long-term view? Because we know we have a strategic plan, we talk about vision, but you also made mention about the 8-year, 4-year rule and how everybody's thinking about what's in it for me. How can we as a people guide our politicians in making sure that we do that?
That's one of the biggest challenges in our constitution. As I've indicated, I'm not a fan of amending laws. If I were to have that chance, that part on the National Development Planning Commission is one of the places I will make amendments. Because in creating National Development Planning Commission, we took it out of cabinet. We forget that when you have in parliament, you have select and standing committees. People forget what it really means. A standing committee is a committee which is there, at all the time. Because, for example, you always have a finance committee, that's a standing committee. A select committee is a committee that mimics the ministries the government creates. So, for example, President Mahama created a new constitutional instrument and set out, so those ministries will have select committees. Because a National Development Planning Commission is a constitutional body and doesn't have a minister, it doesn't have a parliamentary committee. And I've always argued that you have a situation where Parliament, until June last year, did not have a committee on the economy. You can check. I've been advocating for this since 2010. We have a country whose parliament never had a committee on the economy. We had a committee on finance. Finance is not the same as the economy. Luckily, in the change of the standing orders in June, they made a change and parliament now has an economic committee. Why is this important? Because NDPC, year after year, has actually been making the plan. They do have long-term plan. There's even a 2057 plan, a national infrastructure plan. They do have it. But once you hand it over to a president, the question is, do I go to this vision, which is 4 years, which is long-term, and I have an election to win or not? And there is no parliamentary committee that is looking at it and putting pressure on them. So that is why I like things like this. If we keep pointing it out and draw the attention to the things in the long-standing vision, my recommendation is simple. The things that they can pick in the long-standing vision that can be done in 4 years, let them do it. Somebody will come and do another 4 years. But you do it in a way that if the next government comes, they should be able to continue. So pick it from that. The way to also ensure it is done is that public servants who have the opportunity to advise governments, when they are making their suggestions to government, making the budget and the rest, should defer to the NDPC plan. That way, it will make things easier for politicians to be able to actually have that long-term vision. We implement the long-term vision without necessarily having it. I don't know that you understand me. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you. So, well, maybe we'll get to the day where we will think long-term and not think just beyond the elections and because I'm coming into power, so what should I do? That day will come. Well, I'm taking my last set of questions, and there are over 12 things you actually enumerated when it comes to the conundrum, overestimating ourselves and underestimating the problem. And you talk about funding, family, party office, traditional leaders, superstition, beliefs and omens, cross-party influence, rebel base, public service nuances. Politicians drive their own agenda and not that of the president, the role of the elite. Now, this round of questions. In our view, what do we think, or what advice can we give to ourselves? I mean, giving to ourselves, we are giving to all of Ghanaians, to ensure that this conundrum, we overcome them for the good of Ghana. Dr. Tinjisi, you can pick any one of them, or look at it holistically.
Well, there are several things one could say, but just very briefly. Number one, we should have a more structured approach to governance. Our politicians make promises. What we don't ask them is how they are going to fund the promises. We appoint people into ministries. Has anybody ever asked the Minister of Health, what is the contribution of the health sector to government revenue? So who are the private sector operators in the health sector? And how much revenue are they contributing to government so that we will have money to fund the health sector? If you have such a structured approach to governance, because our biggest problem now as far as our economy is concerned is revenue generation. We are not generating any revenue, as much revenue as we should. But nobody is asking, all that we know is that we are generating revenue, we are going to customs to find money for us, to get import duty for us. We are going to salaries, taking people's income tax. But really, every government expenditure center should also be able to generate revenue. So you need to be able to tell whichever minister, whoever is running it, that we are giving you 3 billion cedis this year for agric. What are agricultural companies bringing back into the kit? And it's not rocket science. This is how it is done in other places. The other thing I will just add to it very briefly is that we shouldn't despair as a nation. Too often we seem to give up our hands and despair and get disillusioned, and our people are not doing well. We are only, how many years as a nation? 60-something years. I mean, we are talking about countries which have been there for hundreds of years, you know. So we should just make sure that we are going one step after the other. Ghana is not getting worse. Please, young people, Ghana is not getting worse. I mean, 20 years ago, none of you could have come from Swedru to sit here and listen to this in the time you have done. Right? 20 years ago, there were no mobile phones. If you wanted to make a telephone call to Swedru, it was. So Ghana is not getting worse. That is the point I'm making. So we shouldn't despair. And maybe what I should add to it is what my brother PSC Otinyami and I have been discussing. Sometimes we expect too much of our leaders. But in truth, good leaders and great leaders are far and few in between. Every nation coasts. Once in a while, you get a great leader who makes a quantum leap, and then the nation will coast or even come down. After another whatever years, you have another great leader. It's the same thing. How many charismatic church leaders are there in Ghana if you take it on one-time scale? How many do we know? Dr. Mensah Otabil. You understand what I'm saying? Yes. Great leaders are few and far between because it is not an easy task. So we shouldn't despair. Just make sure that one step at a time, we are moving steadily.
Thank you very much. One step at a time. Lawyer,
No, the point is...
Okay, so he talked about a lot of things: funding, family, party office, role of traditional leaders, superstition, beliefs, public service nuances, the role of the elite, all these. What advice do we have for ourselves as Ghanaians?
Okay, so as a people, we need to change. And as people who aspire for political leadership, they should also be truthful to themselves, be able to analyze the situation on the ground and speak to it. But the point is that if you are truthful to yourself, if you speak to the situation on the ground, is it something which will win you an election? Because ultimately, it is the power that you want. And there are certain truths which are difficult to swallow. There are certain things which you will find difficult to proceed in a situation. I had a priest friend, and he was telling me about some radio station that he likes. So as for this radio station, I like them, but because they speak the truth, but they only embellish it small. so for him, that is what it is. He loves the station because there is the truth that they will say, but they will embellish it for it to sound nice in your ears. There are certain nuances that they know. It is not that the politicians do not know. They know. There are issues of family and friends. There are issues of your source of funding, whether it is even the right source or not. Like the main speaker mentioned, in your quest to win power, you can sell your soul to the devil. You will do everything to. And I have friends who are politicians. If some tell me the places that they've been to just to win power or just for the sex, because it is like if you win that power, a lot of things, it's like let me win the power first, and after I win the power, I will decide on my next move or what to do. And then when you do that, you win the power all right, but you realize that it is that which is now controlling you. That is what becomes your God. So it is not as if you don't know the nuances. If you are prepared to open your eyes a little, you will see. But the question is that, will that let you win an election or not? If you stand on the truth, is it only the truth which will let you win an election? Are there certain things you need to add? Because ultimately, it is power you desire. It is power you seek. And now, if you don't do that, you will not get the power. We have a very, I won't say it's dynamic, but our situation is quite different. If you look at our political systems since the colonial times and then the sort of leaders that we have had throughout all the dispensations, coupled with the military rulers who came, they have all had brilliant ideas. along the line, some have fallen off the way, some have even been, you will not recognize them from where they were or how they were when they were seeking power, and now that they are in power. The truth of the matter is that we blame them, but we also have to blame ourselves. Sometimes in changing, we must first look at ourselves and decide that can we as a nation change? Because we have situations where we have the abnormality becoming the norm now in Ghana. On our platform, we had a very, very interesting debate when the young chap in Swedru found money and then returned the money. And then the head mistress had a discussion, talked with him, and then it went viral. There were some who were like, what's the big deal about this? Somebody has found money. It is normal, the money is not yours. Why? And somebody has found it. Why should it be a big deal to be announcing it? And there were others who were saying that, look, we have situations, we have found ourselves in positions where the money, the person, even the money is in your pocket, the person is coming to take it. And then the money is now on the ground. It's no man's land. So it becomes difficult as a people that have our values gone so low that we have allowed something like corruption. It's endemic. It is like a cancer, and all leaders in every dispensation, right from colonial times, it is the degrees which vary. But every government is like, this government is corrupt. This government, for every government, if you find something that it is corruption. You can start from the colonial times. It has never ever changed. What do we do as a nation? What do we do as a people to ensure that some of these things we move away from? If we do that, the political leaders need a reset, but we also need a reset as well.
Thank you. We also need a reset as well. Lawyer Premi, what advice do you have for us to overcome this conundrum?
My brother has said it all. When you listen to the main speaker and all the things each of the panelists here have stated, this program appears to be an attempt or a little effort in contributing to the reset agenda of Ghana, making Ghana great again. But our tradition as Ghanaians has always been looking at a group of people called the leaders on one side and marking, forgetting that we are also part of the system of governance, you and I. So I'd like to use this opportunity to remind each one of us that we all have a contribution to make. Whether you're employed in the public sector or the private sector, as a Ghanaian, fellow Ghanaian, irrespective of your political divide, Ghana is bigger than all our interests in politics and all of it. Let's try to place our nation first, as others in other places are doing, like in America. We have no other place but Ghana. If we decide to make our country great again, where all the youth will want to stay home and make a living, it is certainly possible. But it takes a change of our mindset, not only as electorate, but also people who find themselves in leadership positions over us. And it's very important that our state institutions are also given the needed space, the needed independence to work in accordance with the mandate that has been given, to hold people accountable. When anyone goes against the standards that are set and is found looting, destroying the water bodies, let them face the law squarely. After all, the rule of law says no one is above the law. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And finally, Doc, our president is appointing directly and indirectly over 6,000 individuals into various leadership positions at the ministerial, regulatory agency, and corporate organizations. What are your final advice? Because it's still ongoing.
Well, he has the prerogative to appoint. There is, and like Tony said, again,
somebody can manage a country with 19 ministers, another person can manage with 100 or so. The important point, and I agree with Tony on that, is what do they do? So I would recommend that in making appointments, you are clearly telling them, this is what I want you to achieve, and this is when you must achieve it. I said something in the presentation that ministers go with their own agenda. If you don't give them the KPIs, they would drive their own agenda, and often their agenda is different from the president's agenda. So I do have that recommendation. But there's something I think is important to talk about. It has to do with the concept of productivity. This country, we are not productive. And that advice should go on not only to the politicians, but actually more to the private sector. We are not a productive people. You find Ghanaians who do little things, a few, he is fine. So we don't scale. Now, in this modern world, productivity and scale is very important. It doesn't mean everybody should go about scaling. It means that either we get people to scale or we aggregate the scale. It's quite, without that, and the scale comes in different angles. Let me just give you one example in the public sector. And I keep saying this. How can you have 18 million people on your voters register and only 4 million have got bank accounts? It doesn't make sense. Why are the remaining 14 or 12 million people? They don't have bank accounts. Unless we, yes, again, you want me to go into areas I want to avoid. Which is why it is important to turn every Momo account into a bank account. Because if you don't integrate them into the financial system, I don't care whether they use Momo or not. My point is, if you have 18 million people voting, then is there something wrong if only 4 million people have bank accounts? They are not financially integrated. So the public sector must do that. But I want to address the private sector before I conclude. We must increase productivity consciously. If we don't, and we remain this little, and somebody is not aggregating them, we will lose our relevance in the Community of Nations. You see, as the world is changing with AI and all that, a lot of the basic routine things will be taken away by those who control technology. Unless we can move to that up end and use technology to be able to scale, we can't compete in the Community of Nations, and those are the things that we as private sector don't have to wait for the public sector to do. We each in our own enterprises have to take action about increasing productivity. Otherwise, we will begin to look more and more insignificant.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, I've just been signaled that our time is up, but there's something interesting that you saw me discussing with Dr. Oting. Doc, 1 minute.
Yes, I think that it's important that as we go away, we also think about how leaders are made in our nation. If you look at the UK, you will find that between Oxford and Cambridge, about 70-80% of their leaders pass through those two institutions. And in particular, they study what we call PPE, politics, philosophy, and economics, or they study history, or they study law. That is the way. And in fact, in the UK, the Oxford Debating Society, they call it the Oxford Union. Almost every prime minister has belonged to that union. In the US, they look at the Ivy Leagues and a few of these things, and you find that more than half the presidents have been to one or other. If you add West Point, their military training schools and things, you have, What is our equivalent in Ghana? In China, my brother tells me in China, they have a set of, 100 books that everybody aspiring to political leadership in China should have read, including their history, what China was before, where they want to get, economics, science. You should read it no matter what. And what is done is that before you can become a regional governor in China, you must have been a district governor, and then they promote you before you can get to central bureau, before you can become a top Politburo member and all that. We need to find a way to institutionalize leadership training. We have heard of President Kufuor set up a leadership training school after office. I don't know its status. I know there was one for President Atta Mills. I don't know its status now. But the universities on their own should be able to set a curriculum, relevant curriculum for people who seek political leadership. So that I know I want to be DCE or MCE, I know I should go and study to this level. If I want to be regional minister, I should be this level. And open it to everybody. So when I'm choosing my district chief executives, I know what I'm looking at. We need to institutionalize some of these things. Nobody will do it for us. And that is where our own school curriculum, we should make relevant to our needs as a nation. My time is up.
Thank you very much, Doc, for this. And since you brought in the university setting up leadership, I can say that at Unimark, we have communication program for our politicians that we are rolling out. So we have started setting the pace for that, and I know the others will continue. So distinguished ladies and gentlemen, fellow Swedruians, this is all time will permit us to do. It's been an interesting conversation. Will you agree with me? Please put your hands together once more for our panelists. And I started by saying that a lot has been shared. We were going to discuss it, and we will leave the rest as fertilizers for our growth. So we haven't discussed everything. I'm sure if ChannelOne will give us time for the whole year, we can still be discussing this topic. So we've learned a lot. We've unlearned some of the things, and we are going away wiser to become better Ghanaians. We are all leaders in our own field. So let's shine the light wherever we are. And if we do that collectively, Ghana will win. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. And you're going to take our seats. So, Dr. thank you for the brilliant presentation. Please, you can now exit the stage. Please put your hands together for Lawyer Mavis. Thank you for your contribution. Lawyer Elia and Dr. Oting. MC.